In this video, I'm going to talk about how online communities contribute to my own personal sense of belonging. Now, belonging is a really complicated topic, and over the years, I've been thinking a lot about it. I've come to realize that for me, belonging comes from 5 different areas. The first is within myself. I need to feel like I'm worthy and find belonging within myself. So that's number 1. Number 2 is in my personal relationships. 3 is out in the world, just being in nature, being among people within the same city. That really brings me a sense of belonging because I feel like I am one person in a huge world of people. I've talked about this in another video, but that really helps me to gain some perspective. I also need to have things that I'm interested in. So for me, these are my hobbies like YouTube and writing. These 4 things are always in flux, and I feel like I have a pretty good handle on them. But the one piece that I've felt has been somewhat missing in my belonging puzzle is community. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how I use online communities, which are a great fit for me, to contribute to my overall sense of belonging. Now, I know there are certain perceptions out there of online communities perhaps being lesser than in-person communities, but for someone like me, online communities are perfect, and I'm going to go into why this is the case. But this isn't a panacea. I am not speaking for everyone. I know there are a lot of people out there who don't really value online communities, or perhaps they thrive in in-person communities. I think there can be room in someone's life for both, but for me, in terms of my current level of participation within communities, I tend to gravitate more to the online, and I'm going to talk about why that is. I'm going to start off by saying that online communities are perfect for people who have a variety of interests, including niche interests, and also people who have ever-changing interests. I've described myself as a community chameleon, meaning that over the years I have joined multiple communities, I've been active in multiple communities, and I've also left those communities. In terms of communities that gather based on interest and the like, I don't have a lifelong thread. My interests are always changing, and my level of passion for a specific interest also waxes and wanes. When I'm passionate about something, I am super passionate about it. I really want to go deep. But once I've lost interest, the interest pretty much goes to zero. For that reason, one of my favorite places to dip into online communities is Reddit. For example, there was a period of time when I was really into coffee, so I joined the coffee subreddit. When I was writing my book, I was constantly checking the self-publish subreddit. And when I was incredibly immersed in Pokemon Go, I joined the Sylph Road. These online communities are easy to join. You can contribute to the extent that you want, so you can be an active participant and post to these communities, or you can be a more passive observer and read the posts but still feel like you're part of the community because you have a sense of what people are talking about because you have the shared interest. And when your interests happen to change, it's no issue to fade away. There's really no expectation that you should explain yourself or why you're leaving, that sort of thing. It's kind of given that the membership is transient in these online communities and people come and go, but the community remains. Some people might argue that that's a drawback because you're not engaging in deep and meaningful conversations, getting to know a person and that sort of thing. But I fulfill that need within my personal relationships. I like to go deep in my personal relationships. I show up for my personal relationships. I try to work through issues in my personal relationships. And I don't really want to do that in all areas of my life. It takes a lot of emotional labor. So in my communities, especially when they're so interest focused, I'd rather just dip in when I have the interest and fade away when I no longer do. Online communities are great for introverts and people who need to conserve their energy. As an introvert, I have to be really careful where I direct my energy because I need a lot of time to recharge after my interactions. When it comes to my energy levels, I generally prioritize my creative projects and my personal relationships. I much prefer one-on-one interactions because I find group gatherings incredibly draining. And on top of that, I often feel a bit unfulfilled after a group gathering. But I still love being in a community where people share the same interest because there's a certain nerding out that happens. But I don't want to go to a group gathering because it's just so draining for me. This is why I gravitate so much towards online communities like Reddit, because I can nerd out with people without expending a lot of physical, mental, or emotional energy. I can be lying on the couch in my PJs and dip in and out as my energy allows, and I don't have to be on in the same way as I'd need to be in an in-person gathering. Online communities are also fantastic for people with social anxiety or people with other characteristics that might prevent them from going to an in-person gathering. Now, I'm not sure if I have social anxiety, but I do know that I feel a lot of resistance when I think about joining an in-person community. I just don't want to do it, and maybe part of that could be social anxiety. I'm not sure. I've never really been diagnosed for something like that, but I'm not excited about the prospect of joining a new in-person community. I also have some barriers and preferences in terms of location. I don't drive, so it's a big hassle for me to get somewhere that's not within walking distance, and I don't enjoy taking public transportation, so that really limits the geographical location of the communities that I choose to participate in. The last factor I'll mention is that I'm more of a morning or daytime person, and it's harder to find in-person communities that meet during this time. Most things are reserved for evenings or weekends, but that's usually the time I reserve for family and friends or for myself to wind down, to relax, to recharge. I love that online communities are accessible at any time, and I can choose when to participate. There's no travel time or transportation costs involved. It's very flexible and accessible. Online communities are also good for people who want to maintain their privacy or perhaps have trouble maintaining boundaries when they're in person. If you like, you can even be anonymous. Whereas with in-person communities, there's a level of sharing that's expected. There's small talk, there's what do you do for work? Also, as an INFJ, conversations can get very deep and personal very quickly. And sometimes I don't want to go deep and personal. Sometimes houseplants is all I want to talk about. With online communities, you don't have to engage in topics that you find draining. So for me personally, these can be politics, current events, and gossip. Of course, with my one-on-one interactions, I am okay to go deep. I don't really like to gossip at any time, but I'm okay to touch on politics. I'm okay to touch on current events. These topics usually come and go. There's like an ebb and flow in one-on-one conversations, and I have more of an ability in these conversations to redirect. But with my personality type in larger groups or community gatherings, I feel incredibly uncomfortable trying to steer the conversation in a different direction. Subreddits are moderated, so I find that most of them do stay on topic, and if something comes up that's off topic that I don't want to participate in, I don't have to go into that particular post. I can look for something else that captures exactly what I want in this moment. The other thing I like about online forums like Reddit is that if I decide to post something or comment on something, people are judging me by my words and my style of writing in terms of the tone I convey rather than my appearance. The last point I'll mention is that online communities are wonderful for people who value introspection and self-reflection. There's less pressure in online communities to respond quickly. If I read a post and I want to respond, I can pause and reflect before responding. I can draft a response, read it over, and then click post. I can be more thoughtful and intentional in my responses, which makes me feel like I'm being more true to myself versus reacting right away and maybe getting emotional and saying something that I don't exactly mean. This tends to happen to me a lot in in-person situations. Perhaps this is social anxiety manifesting itself, but I tend to say things and then I think about them later and I'm like, well, I didn't exactly mean that. With online communities, when I'm contributing, I feel like I can contribute in a way that is much more balanced and thoughtful and again, intentional. There's also less pressure in online communities to people please. This is another reason I feel like I can be more authentic in online communities because I don't feel as much pressure in terms of a desire to be liked. These are all of the reasons why online communities are such a good fit with my personality and my lifestyle. I want to reiterate that I'm not saying that online communities are better than in-person communities as like a panacea, but for me, they are my preferred approach when it comes to engaging in community. That doesn't mean that I'm not willing to be a part of in-person communities. I did join a book club last year and I go to every single meeting. I'm open to joining in-person communities in the future if I find one that's the right fit, but for now I am very content with dipping my toe into online communities, there is a part of me that wants to contribute a little more, be a little more active in online communities, and I'm currently thinking through how I want to do that still feels very aligned with my lifestyle, my energy level, my personality, and that sort of thing. I do like stepping out of my comfort zone, but I'm really careful because I do know that my energy is limited and I don't have as much energy now as I did in my 20s and 30s. There's really no right answer when it comes to finding belonging and how you use community to do that. What works for one person works for one person. So what works for me, and it's really up to you to find out what works for you. I'd love to know down below your thoughts on online communities, if you are a Redditor, and what subreddits are your favorite. That is going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back very soon with another one. Until then, please take care and bye for now.